Hey guys, welcome back to Teens and Faith Catholic Conversations. I'm your host Annie, and I'm joined by my co-host Gianna.
Hey, what's up?
So before we get into this episode, we wanted to start off with our prayer. O Saint Philomena, Virgin and Martyr, pray for us that, through thy most powerful intercession, we may obtain that purity of mind and heart which leads to the perfect love of God. Amen.
Amen.
So Gianna, what do we have coming up this episode?
This episode will be interviewing my uncle who is a firefighter, so he'll talk about his experiences with that and everything. And yeah, and now we're gonna get into talking about things that we've done. And he's got quite the story, so I'll let her go first.
No. I want you to go first because I have a lot to talk
No.
about.
All
So
right, fine. Um, I have no idea. But
I feel like I remember you telling me that you got to meet this like super cool person on Thursday.
I don't remember her being that cool though.
Shots fired.
All right, no, I did get to meet Annie on Thursday for the first time, so that was really cool. Also really weird because,
Yeah,
you know,
I walked into your house and it was like I was picturing your head to still be in the screen. I was like, this is really weird. But
exactly. Yeah, I was just, it was weird just being able to like be up close and like see the whole body of the person. But, yeah, so, but it was fun. Stayed up pretty late tonight, but,
yeah.
yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so as you all know, I was just in Ohio for the past week and I have a lot of stories to tell. So I'm just gonna get into that. I'll break it day by day because we did a lot every single day. So Thursday we woke up at 4 a.m. Because from our house to Ohio, it's like an 18-hour drive because we're slow. But anyways, so we woke up at 4 a.m. and we decided we were gonna let some of the kids watch a movie. Now, we did not know that a lot of my siblings get car sick. So the movie had been on for about 10 minutes, and my brother Benjamin's like, "Dad, I need a bag. Dad, I need a bag." And we're like, "What? What's wrong? Like, you're fine." And about 5 seconds after Benjamin said that, he threw up all over the back seat and all over the back of the car. Got it all over his clothes, got it all over everything. So Sammy looks over, does the exact same thing, pukes everywhere. About 5 seconds go by. Nicholas is like, "Dad, I need a bag," and we're still shocked about like the other two that just threw up. Then Nicholas vomits, and then Mary looks over and she vomits. So we pulled over, and I had to run into this random store to get Benjamin some new clothes because he ruined his clothes. And my dad had to get cleaning supplies because we had to clean the back of the car. And I went in there with Mary and Lucy and Sammy, and then I came back out to the car, and my mom was like, "Annie, you need to get Benjamin a shirt too." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go back in." Mary really wanted to come with me, so she started chasing me, like trying to get out of the car. And while she was getting out of the car, she knocked over our cooler with all of our food and ice in it. My mom is on the verge of tears at this point. I ran inside, got in stuff. We're all like so annoyed, and so no more screens the rest of that trip. And then we made it to Gianna's. And oh, yeah, before we went to Gianna's, I got to stop at a St. Philomena shrine in Wisconsin that we didn't know existed until my mom and I read the book St. Philomena Powerful with God. And so it's not like a church that they say mass in. So it was when you walked in, it was kind of like giving like a Protestant church kind of vibe thingy bobber, you know? But outside, so before you walk into the little shrine area, there is a beautiful statue of Saint Philomena with different prayer intentions that you can write, and they have a bunch of candles lit and beautiful stained glass windows. They are beautiful. Anyways, and then they have a rosary walk around a cemetery so you can pray for souls, and we did that. And they have really good, what do you want to call them? Like pictures of all of the mysteries. So that was really pretty. And then we walked into the church, and they have relics of Saint Philomena, Saint John Vianney, and Saint Pope Pius X in there. They were very cool to see because you could get really close to the relics, and we were the only ones there. It's not like a real church or anything, but I got really close to like an actual relic of Saint Philomena, and that was mind blowing. And then they had a little area you could kneel down by her statue, and her statue was so pretty. They also had a really pretty statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary and Saint Joseph, so those were really pretty. Um, and then we went to Gianna's house Thursday night. That was really fun. And Gianna, I can't believe you didn't mention this on the podcast. She started taking violin lessons. Her face
What?
right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, I did. But I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I only taken 3 lessons. So, and then I told Annie, then she got really excited, and then she and I were playing a song that Annie was writing on paper.
Yeah, I was so Gianna isn't really good at reading sheet music yet because she just started. So I was like writing the note names and like what fingers they are on the string. And it was, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the song Ashokan Farewell. We were playing that song together and she did really good for being a newbie. So I was really impressed. All
Thank you.
right. And then, so Friday we woke up and we finally drove all the way to Ohio. And then we met Father McKenna at SGG and he gave us a tour of the entire church and me and all my siblings, we've like I've talked about, we've never really been in a big church before. So when we walked in there, we were all just absolutely mind blown. Even my parents were just in shock about how many statues they have, how beautiful it is, some of the stained glass windows that they have, how big it is too. The altar is so pretty. Like I don't know if any, I mean, I know a lot of the viewers are from SGG, but it's a really beautiful church and they have a lot of relics too. And they have a ton of like an entire wall just full of pictures of the saints because for every saint's feast day, they put a picture of the saint on like a little, I don't want to say table, but I don't know. It's kind of like a little mini altar thing for like the saint's feast day. So that is really cool. And then they have a bunch of candles that you can light and they have different altars set up. Like they have an altar for the Blessed Virgin Mary, an altar for Saint Joseph, I believe. That might be wrong. Sorry.
I
Yeah.
think they do have a St. Joseph's altar,
Okay,
so
yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So it is such a beautiful church. I did not want to leave there. Like it is insane. And even like being there and like we were there for a whole week and I just every time me and my siblings walked into that church, like my mom was telling one of the parishioners that she was like all of your kids are just like looking forward, enjoying mass while my kids are just looking around, looking at all the statues, like still just mind blown every time they walk in here. But yeah. And then Saturday we went to High Mass and I got to go to my first High Mass. That was really a really good experience. And then after Mass I got to stay because they like we had Anna Bergman on to talk about the Sedalia charity. I got to stay and help set up for Fall Festival, so I got to be a part of the Sedalia charity for a day, and that was really fun. And I also got a chance to talk and meet to all of the oblates, so shout out if any of the oblates are listening right now. And then we got to go to the Kajezo's house Saturday evening. So if the Kajezo's listening, shout out to you guys too. Um, and that was really fun. We got to play football. But yeah, I'm not really good at football. And then Sunday we went to the morning mass there and I got a chance to sing into the choir. They were so kind to us the entire trip. They were just like the choir director was like, "Oh, if you just want to jump in and sing in the choir, you can." Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know any of the songs, but they still let me jump in and sing in the choir. So that was really cool. And I'm really appreciative that they let me do that. And then after Mass, we got to go to the Fall Festival where I got to meet a lot of my friends from Trad Chat. So that was really fun. And then I got to buy a bunch of the stuff there. Like, I don't know if any of you guys were at Fall Festival listening, but Francis Cajezo made these amazing cookie type things. I don't remember what they were called. I think Buckeyes maybe. They were amazing. I ate like 3 of them. And then Ivy and Ruby, shout out if you guys are listening. Ivy had really good ice cream there. And Ruby was selling these little cute dolls, and I bought one, and it's actually in my room right now. And then they had a bunch of games at Fall Festival too, and then they had a band playing, so it was really cool to hear them. Oh, and then I got to meet one of my good friends, Nico, there. So I think I've given you a shout out before. So shout out again if you're listening, Nico. And then Monday we got to go to a zoo with the Kajazos and Nico and his little brother. And that was really fun. They had a lot of cool animals there because like I don't know if any of you guys have been to a lot of zoos, but I've maybe been to one zoo in my entire life before this. So it was cool to see like giraffes and zebras and stuff. Like my little sister Lucy fell in love with the zebras. Yeah, and then Tuesday we drove back home, and now it's Thursday, and I'm still recovering from that trip. It was really fun, and I think we're gonna try to go every year, but Yeah, I didn't want to leave SGG. Yeah.
Now it's time to interview my uncle. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jeff. I'm Gianna's uncle. I've been a firefighter for about 20 years now. I live in Wisconsin. I have a wife and a son. My son is 9 years old, and I've been going to the traditional mass my whole life.
All right. So, how did you know you wanted to become a firefighter?
Um, it kind of developed over time. It was not something I knew from boyhood that I wanted to do or anything like that. I went through my gamut of other things that I wanted to be growing up. But once I was in high school and it was starting to come time to make a decision on something like that, and I saw other things that interested me probably weren't really the route that I was going to wind up going down. It seemed like a viable option to me, and as I investigated it, there were definitely aspects of it that I found attractive. I thought, the physical aspect of it was, very appealing to me. The the overall idea of the job and what you were doing and accomplishing. I liked being able to the idea of being able to help out in those undesirable situations and stuff. But obviously, as you come to those notions, you have somewhat of a stereotypical notion of what society sees, and it's not until you get into it that you have a better idea of what it really actually is and everything. So that's kind of how it started. And as I decided to move forward and get into that, I started it right after high school. It seemed like the most appropriate thing. I had a lot of discouragement from people, from superiors. They didn't really like the notion of, or didn't recommend the notion of going to a traditional 4-year college and everything. And with that being said, obviously you had to figure out something that you were going to do, and it seemed like a reasonable route.
That's interesting. Backstory on that. Let's see, on the job, have you ever been burned or injured before?
I've never been burned before. However, I have been injured in various capacities on the job, and some of it might not be traditional ways that people would think of. Again, going back to what I said earlier, the different aspects of things that you would never consider. Now, obviously, there is quite a great deal of lifting involved, lifting of other human beings and heavy objects and stuff. And I've had minor, like pulls of the back and stuff like that. Nothing. I've been pretty fortunate overall that none of that stuff, excuse me, is anything that I've ever missed time from work over. However, I actually had gotten Lyme's disease from work before. We were on a searching for a lady who had gone missing. It was a very, very large scale search and everything. And it was through a lot of swampy, undesirable areas. And it was a full day event through very humid, rainy, then sunny conditions and everything. And then I got home. I had went and took my uniform off and went to go take a shower. And then my wife went to go um, throw the stuff into the washing machine. She said she found a tick there, and I hadn't really thought anything of it. I didn't notice any tick bites or anything on me, but sure enough, a week and a half later, I came down with a pretty gnarly fever. Didn't, or I went. I thought it was very odd because I hadn't had a fever since I was a kid. And then, so I went to get it checked out. No flu, no strep, nothing like that. But just thought it was a bug. But then a few days, it was a day or two later, I had a small welt that showed up on my hip, and that turned into the massive traditional bullseye that you hear with Lyme's disease. So then I went back and like, oh yeah, that's what you got. So then I had to get treated for that. I was fortunate enough to have the obvious symptom of that, because a lot of people that get it, it goes untreated because it's not very commonly diagnosed or anything like that. But that was one thing I got from work. But besides that, like I said, I've been very fortunate with just like minor, sprains and stuff like that. Nothing to miss time for. There's a lot of other people that have had other injuries and stuff that they've had to miss substantially more time for, whether it's blowing out a shoulder or a knee or something like that.
I mean, that is really fortunate. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of sad in a way. I mean, he's not a firefighter, but he like hardly ever gets sick, and then we all make fun of him because we always get it really bad, and he hardly gets anything. So,
Sure. Yeah. I, I traditionally have in adulthood I've been fortunate enough not to get sick a ton, but it was funny. I've heard, I don't know if there's any truth to this or not. It's just one of those things that I've heard, that every 7 years your immune system kind of cycles itself through, and then you have a year of getting sick. And I had that year a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, after I was probably my Sam was probably about 2 years old, and he was starting to get sick with everything. And that year I was just getting sick constantly. So
Oh,
fortunately, if
nice.
that is true and that's the case, I have a few more years before that comes around again.
So now we're wondering, are there any certain prayers you say before going into dangerous calls or situations?
I can't. I mean, obviously, you never know when a call's coming in, and when a call does come in, it's not like you have any time to sit and get a couple of prayers in on your way out or anything like that. I mean, as soon as the red light comes on, you're expected to start moving towards whatever piece of apparatus you're on immediately, and then you're out the door, and your mind is kind of getting geared towards whatever it is that you're going to, whatever the call is for, what you're going to be accomplishing on that particular call. But with that being said, I would say before I leave for work in the morning, I mean, I always say a prayer to Saint Florian, for the sake of me and my crew members for the day, to have everything go well and not run into any serious problems or issues. But then also, because I mean, the way a schedule works with being scheduled for 24 hours a day, I always say a prayer to Saint Joseph too before I leave in the morning, because I am leaving my family for the next, at minimum, the next day. If not, sometimes it can be 2 or 3 days at a time too. So I like to leave them in as good of hands as I possibly can. And I mean, I am technically only 15 minutes away, even if I am gone for 2 or 3 days. And in the event of an emergency, you can be released under certain circumstances, but still, it's when you're going to be gone for a little bit like that on a regular basis, it does. I am in the habit of that. Also, I mean, there are obviously, it's not the easiest thing to do, but with the fact that obviously people aren't calling us because they're having a good day, and obviously some of those days get to be quite bad for them. For people that it is looking rather dire for, or even not so much dire, but having a particularly bad day. If I'll try to focus my mind enough, if I have the ability to at least say a few Hail Marys for whoever. I mean, to be able to at least do something for them. And then for the more dire ones, if I can, if I'm have the means to do so, I will try to say like an act of contrition for the person as well. So I don't know if that answers the question that you're gearing towards there. Did I
Yeah, that
cover it
was
pretty
good.
well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that was great.
But
Yeah.
if there's ever anything that I'm not covering to your liking, feel free to ask me to elaborate more, and I'd be happy to.
Oh yeah,
All
of
right.
course. And Saint Florian, why do you pray to him? Is
He's the patron saint of firefighters.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good prayers to say.
Yeah.
Hail Marys, definitely. I love the Hail Mary prayer. I say
An
that
act of
very
contrition.
often. Yeah, the
It's
act.
one that we all know by heart so easily. That's obviously such a powerful one to be able to say for anybody. So I mean, it's one that it's not like I have to sit there and think about that it's not being prayed on a regular basis. It's one that pretty much flows flows through the mind and flows through the tongue pretty effortlessly. So,
So, um, changing topics a little bit here, but or more of the subject. What's the dumbest call you've ever been on?
um, no, I say this and because not everybody has the same level of training, so I don't like to be very critical of quote unquote what would be viewed as dumb calls, because most of the time people have in their minds a genuinely good reason for calling. They've got a problem that they can't solve on their own. So I'm not going to be too critical on anybody for the reason that they call. Now, however, there are some things that definitely have been rather silly over the years where we've been called. Oftentimes, it's for the person that calls from their vehicle that's passing by that doesn't stop, that thinks they see something, and then you get there and it turns out to not really be at all the case. I just remember some years back we got called because a passerby on the freeway saw smoke absolutely pouring out of a building. It was going up in flames, and obviously they sent a full response for a fire, and it ended up being that it wasn't. We arrived at the scene to just find that it was cloudy day with clouds passing over, and that portrayed the image of smoke to this person. And there was absolutely no emergency at all. It was just simply that the clouds were passing by and it caught it in a certain angle that must have looked that way to somebody. We've also had it before where somebody said there were flames shooting out of a window, and it was just happened to be that it was one of those older incandescent light bulbs that has more of an orangish hue to it. That was just nothing more than a lamp operating the way it was supposed to be that had an orangish glow to it. So there's a lot of people that just catch something out of the corner of their eye and jump right away to it. They might fail to consider just double checking and making sure they're seeing what they're seeing.
Yeah, I might have done that a few times. I mean, not on the call, but usually just telling my parents about something.
Yep.
Just
I
things.
teach CPR as a part-time job as well, and one of the things that they very much stress as part of before you call 911, always checking the person for responsiveness, asking to make sure that they're okay before you go call 911, because well, it's not uncommon for it to happen that they're not actually in any sort of distress. But as I said, people mean the best. They just might not necessarily go about all the steps appropriately.
Yep. So would you say that it's hard working among people who aren't Catholic or?
Um, yes and no. For the most part, for the most part, um, there's a lot of guys there that are just there to. They're good guys, good folks that maybe they might not have a huge interest in religion whatsoever, but they're fine people to work around. They don't give you any sort of a hard time for it. Typically, it doesn't oftentimes come up with a lot of people, and that's their prerogative. There's other people that it does come up with that. I work with a fair amount of Novus Ordos or Protestants that it will come up with in there, but most of them are very, very respectful. They are interested in having some sort of dialogue because they might not necessarily be overly educated in it. And I think it's important to answer the questions as appropriate, but not be pushy with people. And then there's other people that definitely have a little bit more hostility towards it, of a negative opinion, and that's definitely it's become easier for me as I've gotten older. That was definitely something. Dealing with those types of people was a little harder when I was younger. I didn't really know how to deal with it, but you figure it out as you get older, and most people, for the most part, have their opinions, and they let you, for the most part, people let it be. They might not agree with it, but I mean, that's life. I mean, you're going to find that with just about everything. I mean, So I would say, to answer your question, as a general whole, there are certain challenges depending on who you're with. Like you can't compare. I work at a place that we have about 100 different people, and there's 100 different personalities. So it's like you can't give a uniform, one size fits all answer to everybody there. But for the most part, everybody just is good folks that don't really pay a lot of mind to it, which is fine. And the people that are a little bit more uncomfortable with it, it's not like you're working with them all the time. And most of them, it doesn't come up on a regular basis. And as I said, it's gotten easier as I got older and have gotten a little bit wiser as to how to maneuver those situations.
That's good advice, especially when you have to deal with people of different temperaments. I mean, not everyone is going to get along. I mean, I have trouble getting along with my brother Elias. We're both
Mm-hmm.
different temperaments. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing. You can talk to anybody in any workplace, no doubt. Like it doesn't matter whether you're talking about religion or what kind of donuts you're gonna get on break. Like not everybody's gonna agree, not everybody's gonna get along, and it's dealing with it as best you can to make sure you can still remain at a cordial relationship and everything. Because at the end of the day, you still have to go to work, and it's not like you're going there to make enemies or anything like that. And you try to look at it too. I mean, every single one of us is meant to save our souls, right? And many of these people have never been exposed to it in any way, and you just try to live as best example as you can, and hopefully it has some sort of positive impact on them.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
so do you always work 24-hour shifts or not always?
Most of the time. Most of the, I'm scheduled for 24 hours, but there's times where you work a trade for somebody, so it might get bumped up to, as I said before, um, 48 hours or 72 hours in a row. But there's also times where you can have shorter stints, like if somebody has been let off of work because they have to go complete some physical or class or something like that, you might get called in for them for 4 hours or something like that. But 24 hours is the original standard norm. And yeah, any deviation from that most of the time is because you agree to it in one fashion or another, whether it's for working for somebody else and then with the expectation that they'll cover for you at a different time, or you get overtime or something like that.
Calls on average, do you think you get a night?
A night, um, we're calling a night starting at, like, we'll say 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Is that a fair? It's different every night. You have nights as uncommon as they might be where you might not get any, but then you might get a night where you have six after 10 o'clock or 6 or 7 after 10 o'clock. So it's it's no rhyme or reason to it in particular. Yeah, like last night what did we do? We were out at midnight 2:30, and then we were done after that for the night. So um, I would say, and it also depends on what station that you're at too. Not all the stations have the same run volume. So our department as a whole runs on average, I think about 25 or 26 calls a day. But then, there's the main station, which is the busiest, and then there's one of the other stations that's on the outskirts that's the slowest. So it's not like it's evenly divided between all the stations. There's different run volume based off of all of that. So the station that I'm at, I think, gosh, I don't remember. I think it averages average about 8 or 9 a day. But then there's days that we do 14 or 15, and then there's days that we might do 3 or 4.
you like stay at one station or do you like switch between them?
Most of the time I'm at the same station, but every so often you get moved. Like I said, if you agree to work a trade for somebody else that works out of a different station, you might get moved to their spot in that station for the day you're working a trade or something for them.
Okay. So how do you guys like decide what roles you are? Like, how do you decide between like firefighter and paramedic and like driver?
So everybody is hired as a firefighter EMT basic. So there's different levels of EMTs. So there's a basic, and in our department, there's paramedic. Paramedic can give more medications and drugs and stuff, but it's a spot that you don't start off at that. Once you take the class, you'll get put into that role at some point, but they want to make sure that you're understanding of all the basic rules and concepts before they put you in that one. So everybody starts off as a firefighter EMT basic. After that, you're going to be a paramedic at some point now. And it depends whether you have the class or not. If you already have the class, then they just put you through a transition program that gets you up to speed, and then they check you off, and boom, you're set to go. If you haven't taken the class, you have to take the class, which is depending on, it's either a semester, it's usually about a year-long class. Sometimes people squeeze in a semester, though it's a little less common these days. And after you're done with that, then you can transition over to that. Once you have a certain amount of time on the job, you can start testing for other promotions. You can test to become an inspector. You can become an equipment operator or a driver or a lieutenant, just based off of how much time you have on. You have to have a certain amount of years on before you can even test for any of that stuff. Once you decide that you want to do that, you take the test, you compete against however many guys also decided to take the test based off of your score. You do a written composite, and there's a practical portion where you do all these different stations and stuff, and they score everything that you do. And based off of how you do, you get placed on a list. Based off of once you're on that list, the list lasts for 2 years, and you can, when there's like one of the other people that is in that role that's on vacation, you can act in their spot, but you get promoted off of it just based off of if you finish number one on the list, you need one person to retire that has that spot, and then you're promoted to that spot. Same thing with lieutenant or any of those other spots. So if you could finish number one on the list, and if nobody retires, you have to take it again in 2 years. Or if you finish number 3 on the list and 3 people retire, you're set to go, and you can not have to take the test again. But that's traditionally the way the promotional process works there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it works at my dad's police department too, so that makes sense.
Okay.
What is the toughest call you've been on as a firefighter versus the toughest call you've been on as a paramedic?
I would say calls. Toughest calls in EMS to me are typically anytime a young person dies unexpectedly, and seeing the family, the aftermath of that. That's always pretty unpleasant. I can't say that any one in particular oftentimes stands out as being tougher than others. It's just, that's always, I mean, at a certain point, we all expect to die. It's not necessarily a surprise when a 90-year-old person passes away. But when a young person does, that's always very unpleasant. As far as the fire aspect of it goes, I mean, I can't say that any one particular stands out as being tough. I mean, or the toughest, shall we say. Based off of the role, whatever job you have, our responsibilities at a fire are often assigned based off of what order you arrive at the call. So based off of when you get there is what whatever job you have, and some of the jobs that you get are harder than others. And by and large, if you're one of the first handful there, there's a lot of grunt work, a lot of undesirable hard work, and it's a tough. Yeah, I mean, there's aspects to every job that are not desirable, but I mean, I remember we had a apartment fire some years back, and the building was struck by lightning. They pulled us out of there because it looked like the roof was going to collapse, and it did. Then when we had to go back in at a certain point after, it was deemed tenable again, we had it under enough control. All the hoses that we had to abandon in there, we had to pull up from underneath this roof that collapsed. And I mean, that's just miserable, awful manual labor, but it's just like, it is what it is. It's not like it's any harder than what anybody else is doing. It's just like, this is unpleasant. It'll be nice when this is done.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I know my dad always says that the hardest part about his job is when somebody dies, then he has to go talk to the family of the person who
Yeah,
died. And he says that's definitely the worst part about
yeah,
being a cop.
I don't enjoy that.
Yeah,
It doesn't sound enjoyable.
at all.
If
So, do you have any special devotions to any saints?
Just like I was talking to you before, Saint Florian, I always have my prayers to, and Saint Joseph, um, as with regards to the things that we discussed earlier as to why it would be them in particular. I mean, I have other saints and things that I pray to and everything for other things not related to work, health and things of that matter. But mainly Saint Joseph and Saint Florian and Our Lady, obviously, are the mainstays that relate to a lot of the prayers that I say with regards to my job.
so, like you were talking about how you're away from your family a lot. How hard is it to be away from your family for like 24-hour shifts and like missing out on different events?
That is difficult. I very, very much I enjoy being with my wife and my son and everything. And yeah, that is hard. I mean, every adult male has to leave their family for work and everything, and that is what it is. It's not like I ever expected to be impervious to it, but yeah, it is sad when they're out doing fun things on the weekend that I'm not there for, or you're gone for 24 hours. You miss dinner time. Even I enjoy, in the winter time when we make popcorn and watch a movie at night. Even though it's something that we do on a regular basis, I don't like it when I miss it. But I mean, that just is what it is and everything. So I get it. I view it as, this is a means to an end. I have to do this. This is part of my life, and everybody has their capacity that they have to do, and nobody's is exactly the same, but we're all having to do similar things with regards to that. So it's like, yeah, it's hard, but then there's also a lot of things that I do get to be around for, that other people aren't necessarily able to be around for too. So it has its pros and its cons, like I said, with like everything does.
Yeah. So now we're wondering how heavy is your uniform and like what do you wear when you go onto a call?
What was the first part of the question? I'm sorry.
How heavy is your uniform?
Oh, how heavy is my uniform? I get asked that a lot, and you should just weigh it because I don't know the exact. I believe it's something with, so just like the pants and the jacket and the helmet, I believe that stuff is somewhere around 35 pounds or so. And then the air tank that you have to wear with on top of that is, I think that's another 25 or 30 pounds. And then obviously you have whatever tools that you bring with you that you have to use and all that stuff. So when you go to a fire, that's the outer gear that you have on, but then obviously you have what we call our Class C uniform or our station uniform on underneath it, which is usually, pants and a t-shirt. So, or in the winter time, you may even have a sweatshirt on underneath there. But that obviously doesn't add a ton, but I mean, it is another layer of clothing. Pretty much no matter what, you're going to be pretty sweaty by the time you're done.
Yeah, I feel like Gianna and I would collapse if we had to have all that weight on us. So,
Yeah, it, it's a reasonable amount of weight, and it's not even so much that, but like when you have to put the mask on and then you're breathing through that, that's adds a little bit of work to breathing, and that's where it starts to get a little more tiring.
Yeah. I understand survival, but at the same time, it seems like you'll die just wearing all of that.
It, I mean, they do a good job. So the amount of air that's in the bottle, they call it, 45 minutes. When you're working hard, it doesn't last for 45 minutes. You'll get, depending on how hard you're working, 20 to 30 minutes out of it. And they're very, very good that once you breathe a bottle down, you go into rest for a certain amount of time to rehab and get you ready to go again. Because I mean, it's exhausting.
I can imagine with that description.
Yeah.
So, for our last question, Sundays and holy days, like how do you manage church obligations? I mean, obviously it's not sinful to work on Sundays like with your kind of job.
Mhm.
But like how are you able to take off sometimes or
So I use as much vacation time as I can on Sundays. So in a typical year, just the way our schedule maps out, on average, you're scheduled for about 18 Sundays a year. And I'm able to I can usually use about 8 of those vacation days on a Sunday. And a lot of times what I'll do, as I referenced trades before, I end up working a lot more Saturdays. We'll do what we'll call flip flop. I'll work somebody Saturday and they'll work my Sunday for me. So usually I can whittle my Sundays for a year down substantially. I mean, I think this year, I think I had it whittled down to like 4 for the year, I think is what it was. So I try to do a lot of that, take my vacation time and work a lot of trades for other people so I can get as many of the Sundays and holidays off as I can, which works out pretty well. I mean, that was one thing that, not like through some grand calculation on my behalf or anything, but when I was newer on the job, I was very good. I mean, I wasn't married or anything, so I didn't have a family, so I was able to, when somebody would ask me for a trade, sure, I can work a trade for you. So I was able to establish having a good trade reputation at that point. So once you establish yourself as being a reliable person to trade with, that certainly opens up a lot of freedom for you for looking for the days that you're looking for, which for me happens to most of the time be a Sunday.
oh, that's
yeah, my
good.
my dad, he's like the guy that the guys call if they need overtime or something, like if they need him to work for him. So he has a really good reputation about getting a lot of overtime.
Yeah, that's yeah. You start to realize that if I was giving, there'd be a lot of advice that I would give to my younger self, as to how to tweak things and do things a little bit differently. But that was one thing that I was very glad that I did because it's made that a lot easier nowadays. So,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, that wraps up the interview and thanks for coming on.
it's been a pleasure.
So that wraps up episode 14, and thank you guys so much for watching.
Mhm. Oh, and one more thing I almost forgot. Um, shout out to my cousin Sam and my aunt Nikki, if you're listening, since my uncle was on, so they're related to him. Anyway, next episode we will next episode we'll have a really special guest, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, man. Okay, so and then also, sorry, I had to say that for Gianna's little brother Elias. Shout out if you're listening. He was like, next episode, Annie, you gotta say yeah, man. So I did, but yeah. There you go, Elias. I hope you're happy. Um, yeah. So, and then if you have any kids like under 12 or 12 and under who want to come on, make sure to email us by October 31st at Our email is teensandfaith@gmail.com, and then we always put it in the description at the end of our videos. So yeah, as always, God bless, and Saint Philomena,
Powerful God, pray for us.
pray for us.